My name is Nell Stephenson. I'm based in the Palisades, and I work with people to help them fine-tune their nutrition to reach their goals, whether they're trying to be a better athlete, trying to lose weight, trying to have more energy, you name it, it all comes back to food. So this is a picture of me at Kona in 2009, which is my third time at Kona. And I'm showing this picture because I want you to see where I got out of a long circuitous journey. And I won't go into a lot of detail about my own story, but I have to mention the fact that I was sick my entire life with stomach issues and nobody could figure out why. And I figured it out through a very circuitous path that it all came back to being intolerant to gluten and also to a lesser degree soy and dairy. But it's really important to show that what you eat, I think, is probably 80% of the equation. And you can train your butt off, you can do all these different types of exercise, and we have this misconception that that somehow gives us a free pass to eat and do whatever we want. Ultimately, what I want to do every time I have the opportunity to speak to people is take what felt to me like a mess for years and years and years and turn it into a message so that hopefully you can take away some of the mistakes that I made so you don't make them yourself. And one of the funny mistakes I made at my very first triathlon, which was back in 1998, I've been racing for a long time, the sprint triathlon, the mistake I made there, which didn't have anything to do with nutrition, was I forgot to take my helmet off when I was running. So I think I looked really special in that race. First of all, there's a big disconnect between what is food and what is not food. And in my opinion, this is not food. But any magazine you open, and back in the day when I started racing, we didn't have anything online. So it was magazines, it was Competitor, it was Race Place, Triathlon, Runner's World. It was what's in the media. And you're new to the sport. I think 5 or 6 years I was racing, I was sick every single race. In fact, I didn't understand how it was possible for people to do a race and not be sick. I would see people performing at a high level the whole race and think, how come they're not stopping the bathroom? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. It's because we're eating all this, it's just junk. I mean, this is like the sports version of junk food, really. We're disconnected between what we're eating, we're heavily reliant on carbohydrate, and we're not reading ingredient labels. And one thing in particular I want to point out new is an electrolyte tablet. And it has an ingredient called sorbitol. Sorbitol is a low-calorie sugar alcohol. It's used as a binding agent. It is what allows it to have that tablet shape like an Alka-Seltzer. You'll see it also in sugar-free gum and mint. What we're not told is sorbitol is used clinically as a laxative. So you take a Noon and you have stomach issues. You've taken a laxative. But this isn't food. And we're taught that we need these things. It's pure sugar. And it's just the wrong message. And unfortunately, most of us go through a period where we're completely lost because we're following what the media is telling us to do. And so the answer isn't how do I find a more natural source of carbohydrate to then become dependent on. It's how do I shift my metabolism so that I actually use fat as my fuel. Now this is a slide I think is really important. It's an insulin roller coaster. The pictures I've shown along the top are what a typical day might look like in the day of life of any person who is trying to be on a diet, mindful of calories. Now keep in mind, product of the early 90s here, so I was absolutely inundated with the idea of low fat, low carb, Stairmaster 4000 PT, you know, all that stuff, circuit training equipment on the Nautilus. I took a long time to convince myself that eating fat was actually the way to go and not counting calories and trying to eat 1,200 calories. I still have clients to this day saying, I don't want to eat more than 1,000 calories, and I have to say, unless you're 4 feet tall and weigh 80 pounds, you're going to need more than 900 calories. So this is what happens. If you're at the office and you start the day off and you think you're doing the smart thing by having black coffee with skim milk and then a 100-calorie packaged item snack, and then you have a cup of noodles, which is also 100 calories. You're doing this all day long. And sure, maybe at noon you haven't eaten that many calories, but you feel horrible. Even though you're restricting your calories, everything you're giving it is a refined carbohydrate. Put it this way. If we have two sources of fuel, as Jacob mentioned, we can choose fat or we can choose carbohydrate. And carbohydrate is a quick burning fuel. So say you get up in the morning and you think, I'm going to get in a 30-minute jog before work. I'm going to have a healthy thing before I do that, which is a banana. Sure, you have a banana. It's a healthier thing than having a Coca-Cola, but as soon as you give your body that sugar, the body's like, okay, I have fuel coming in, and you feel good for a period of time. But the thing is, you have to keep putting it back in. And we train our bodies to become dependent on that. We can train our bodies to become dependent on fat in the absence of carbohydrate. And that's the key, is to allow our body that transition to become dependent on fat as the fuel. This is a picture of a woman who I wrote feeling fine. She doesn't look very happy about the fact that she's clearly had to start walking in the middle of her event. But I would guess to say, based on my own personal experience, if you asked her how she was doing, she would probably say, I'm fine. Well, what does fine actually mean? And ultimately, we want to be fat burners all the time, not just when we're training. And this goes to people who you might know in your family or friends who aren't athletes, but maybe they just want to have better mental focus at work. Maybe they have kids who are hyperactive all the time. Maybe they want to sleep better. Everything comes back to what we're eating and what we're giving our bodies. So what has fine become? A lot of people, and again, I call myself an undiagnosed sick person for a long time, and what that means to me is a lot of people are walking around in a state of subclinical illness. So you don't have cancer, you don't have MS, you don't have high blood pressure, but every day you kind of just get out of bed feeling so-so, and connecting what we're eating and how we're feeling, and not letting the bar for what fine is drop so low. Vegetables, fruit, meat, fish, game, nuts and seeds, healthy oils, avocado, coconut oil. Those are actually food. They're one ingredient, they're natural, they're not in a package, they're not in a box. 61% of what the average American eats is in a package. And the average American eats 3 pounds of sugar a week. And that's not athletes or not athletes, that's all of us. Some athletes, you could argue, have a disadvantage, because how many times have you heard things like, oh, we just need to get the calories in. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. You're out there working out, get the calories in. Or you take the flip side and say, well, I'm an athlete, so I can go to McDonald's. Or even worse, we see celebrities and figureheads who have won an Olympic medal and they're eating McDonald's, or they're telling you need chocolate milk. And the message is, oh, so-and-so eats McDonald's and he's won a gold medal, so that means it's okay. No, my argument to that is, what if this person actually ate food? He's winning gold medals eating junk, how about if he ate food? Let's see how his performance would increase then. So this is food, and that's what we need to do to nourish ourselves. I call myself the queen of concoctions. I love cooking and I love educating on it, but a smoothie I would make might have, after a workout, maybe a long workout, would have a banana in it, because, and I say long workout because that's the timing of when you want to have these carbohydrates is very specific to where you are in your training, what type of volume are you doing, how long was the workout, and then that's where you factor in the starches or even the fruits fall into the same category. It's a strategic timing of when you're eating these foods. Even the most fit athlete, if they're sitting around at their desk and they have a snack of 3 ripe bananas, that's insane. It's a banana, but it's still a heck of a lot of sugar. And you're going to have a blood sugar spike and you're going to have a blood sugar dip. Instead, we want to shift away from that and use those natural carbohydrates strategically when it's necessary. By default, we're going to create some acidity when we're training. So why would we want to do anything except nourish our bodies with the most clean possible alkaline, anti-inflammatory fuel, which is real food, not insult it with powders and gels and just a whole bunch of junk that the body says, I don't know what to do with this stuff. This on the left is how I looked when I was in 2004. So that's still sick all the time, and I'm every day going to the GI specialist, going to the ER, having misdiagnoses of IBS, Crohn's, colitis, to the last doctor I went to giving me a test for celiac disease, which came back negative. So his takeaway was, you don't have celiac disease. You should not cut gluten out of your diet. If you cut gluten out of your diet, you will not be able to have enough fiber or B vitamins, because the best sources for those are cereal, grains, and bread, which is nonsense because vegetables have 7 to 11 times the amount of fiber that we get in cereal or bread. And the tipping point, if you will, was he sent me on my way with a prescription for Prozac because he said, there is nothing wrong with you when you came out. It's not black and white. It's not celiac or not celiac, gluten or not gluten. You can have an intolerance, an allergy, a sensitivity. I cut gluten out and felt better in 3 days. after being sick every day for a long time, for decades. Feeling better, but I still didn't understand that connection between what an athlete needs to eat. Keep in mind the current recommendations from the USDA today are that an athlete should eat 70% of their calories from carbohydrates. I need these calories, I'm an athlete. Why am I not losing weight? I'm training 25 hours a week. Why? So it was a gradual transition of learning about fat adaptation, changing my diet, changing the macronutrients, and getting to the point where now I can train for a very long period of time. I race on an empty stomach. Like I won my last 270.3s, first 270.3s of the season last year on an empty stomach without taking calories in. Over a long period of time, I let my body adapt to that. And again, the take-home message is it's not to say that everybody has to start racing marathons. It's what you eat, I think, is 80% of the equation, and really, really getting mindful about what you're eating and what is food and what isn't food, and balancing out those macronutrients. In '98, it was like, just go hard, go long all the time. I didn't have a heart rate monitor. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just followed what everybody else was doing, and I trained hard all the time. Fortunately, I have the opportunity to come to my senses sooner than later and not end up in the hospital with adrenal fatigue, which is really difficult to come back from. Why not be proactive, get ahead of the game, and figure out what your zones are now so that you can train safely and effectively and be a healthy athlete for the long haul. But you set a high goal, you figure out what works for you. You have the support here of this facility, you have me if you decide to work together, and you make a choice after you empower yourself with all this education. And the beautiful thing is, it's not complicated or tricky, it's just about eating food and not eating things that aren't food. With this, because no matter how sick you are, how well you are, what your goals are, if you do those two things, eat food and move in some way, shape, or form, you will inherently become more healthy and more fit than